Welcome to Food Shrinks.
Welcome to Food Shrinks.
Hello,
Hey.
everyone.
Happy to see you guys. I tell you,
Happy to see
what a
you.
lucky thing this is.
It
I'm
is.
so
Agreed.
happy you're here listening. So I just want to say, I want to go listen to like Food Shrinks 1 and then like Food Shrinks like 21 because I feel like our friendship has just like evolved. So anyway, a client of mine sent me like an email question that I am going to paraphrase and bring to Food Shrinks today. And my answer was like, can I like ask the Food Shrinks?
Love it.
I actually don't know the answer. It's also like about me, so it's tricky. But so I'm big in I run a group, and I was talking about sort of like my own like New Year's resolutions and as we've talked about on Food Shrinks, like, and so this resolution to not do blue light when I go to sleep. I do
Yeah.
it and so I was talking to the group about how I'm just looking to get some sacred pauses in my life, so I went to this great party and I came home and I was like, I need to watch TV before I go to sleep. And I just took this kind of pregnant pause and I was like, what's going on? Because that's against your rules. I still did it, but I was like, oh, I think I might have had too much fun. Not, sorry, take that back. I think I might have just had like, I think I couldn't like hold the big feeling of having fun. Okay. So I was telling my
Mhm.
group about this because I was sort of trying to talk to them about not villainizing when we're doing something that we don't want to be doing, but really, if you're able to say, like, it was very useful to me. It's I've learned a lot from that moment, and then not like punishing myself for doing blue light. So, her question to me was, do I think that there will always be something waiting in the wings to take the place of old addictive patterns? So she's like, okay, Molly, basically what I'm hearing you say is you don't binge anymore. And now you're working on like you replaced maybe TV with binging or blue light at night
Mhm.
with binging. Is there ever going to be a day that we just don't do anything? She says, do we have to accept that food will always be our first thought in moments of stress? And if so, is the goal simply to acknowledge it, dismiss it, and move on? Radical acceptance. So, like, I don't know. I
Mhm.
was like, read that thing. It's so deep. I was like, I don't know. I think I got to go to like my trusted friends. Wait, I have no idea what the answer to this is. So I'm so curious what you guys think.
Well, I lean into like the nervous system, right? And I think it's wired for survival. And whether it's, addiction or ingrained conditioning, it reverts to what feels really familiar in moments of stress, which for us is food. And so it's just our brain seeking regulation, it's our nervous system. And that was our primary tool
Right.
for a long time. Now, I don't necessarily know that that means it will always be the first thing to come up. I also believe in neuroplasticity. And so I believe we can retrain the brain through practice to do different things. Um, I think it is likely that food may come up as the first thought, but the intensity of the thought, it's not a command
Yeah.
anymore. It's an option, right? And so
Yeah.
it's intensity of the thought, I think, that matters. And like you said, I'm just going to notice it with curiosity, not judgment. Oh, my brain is thinking food's going to help me right now. And then I'm going to pause and think, like, is this what I actually need? Or is there something else I can do to regulate? And then I may even like connect to my body's needs and be like, is this hunger or am I seeking comfort? Like you said, Molly, like maybe my nervous system, it sounds to me like your nervous system, you were just in like, sympathetic and stress and maybe a little too high wound. And
I was like jacked
looking,
up, I think. I was
yeah,
like
you're
jacked up, and
looking to,
it was like past my 8 o'clock bedtime too. So
yeah. So you're seeking some kind of parasympathetic response and, maybe like, easing in or using TV to bring you there is another, it's like harm reduction, right? It's a different way. It
yeah,
doesn't
I guess.
necessarily have to be a bad thing.
Well, the other thought I had, like, I don't know that food. I mean, I wonder for you guys more personally too. Like, I don't know that food is not always my first response, always my first thought in times of stress, but I don't know that I don't know that like distress tolerance skills, like taking a bubble bath or I mean, sometimes my first response, and I guess maybe a lot of times my first reaction is like, I need to call somebody, like I need to connect with someone on this. So my answer to the question kind of primary is also like, I don't think that food's always going to be your first. I wonder, like personally, Claire's like, is that when things go awry, are you like, oh, I should restrict my food right now?
No,
Okay.
definitely not anymore. That's not where I'm at either. And it's so funny when you said your first instinct is to like call someone. My first one is to like tell no one.
You're like,
That's
I'll be in my corner with
yeah,
my thoughts.
I'm just gonna figure this out. And
Okay.
once I figure it out, I'll let everyone know how it went. Like that's
Yeah, no, my first thought is like, okay, who needs to know this right now? It's a wonderful, I don't even know how I got it, but I'm so grateful.
no, it's good. I'm shifting. Like I've been through some really tough stuff lately and I've shared it, even though I like it felt really hard to do. And it has made a difference in the intensity of how bad things are by sharing it with other people. So yes, it's definitely a skill that's good. But what about you, Molly?
Well, I think my take on like what you shared, Molly, is, something that we have to remember is that if we are in an activated state and our amygdala is always scanning for danger, and if we are a person with trauma in our history, I don't know if this person is or not, but certainly I know when, okay. So
actually, it's going to be my second question. This is someone with
okay.
a lot
Yeah.
of trauma.
So I think for me, when trauma is the history, I like to normalize, listen, your brain has there are structures in your brain that have literally changed. The amygdala, which is your internal alarm system that's always scanning for danger, is now enlarged, making it extra sensitive. And your hippocampus, which is responsible for forming memories, to attach memories to those things, is now shrunk. So you don't remember things all the way. There's holes in your memories, gaps in your memory, all of that kind of stuff. And when we are in that activated state, we have these responses that we default to, and everybody's a little bit different. So I name about 7 or 8 of them. They're all F's, so they're easy for me to remember: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fornicate, feed, flop, friend. So feed is one of them. So that being said,
can we just like, are we putting these in the show notes? Like this,
we can.
I feel like you just like dropped that. Like it was
I know my group members are probably like, here goes Molly.
Well, I'm not in your group and it makes me want to join it. Can we go to the 4 that I've never heard of? Fornicate, feed,
flop, and friend.
That's like dead. That's like
yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and friend is maybe more kind of like the appeasement. So fornicate, sex.
Fawn, right?
Fawn is like,
fawn is in polybagel. They like hate that word. They use appease. Appease. Fawn. People please.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wait,
exactly.
We just like dumb down all 8. I know if you're in their groups, thank you for letting them tell me this.
Yeah. So I think fight and flight are pretty not, we don't need to explain them.
I also like to sometimes say that flight is like avoiding, like when you're like, not doing your work or like not cleaning your kitchen.
Or like there's about to be a confrontation and you're like, peace out.
I'm out. Yeah.
I'm getting in the car and driving away.
Avoidance is an underestimated part of.
Oh, it's big.
Flight.
It's big. Like, often people are like, oh, I'm procrastinating. And I'm like, this is your flight response.
So I'm always like, I like remind people of it. I'm like, you need to change your state. Like that's the deal.
Yeah. So then freeze obviously is like, whoop, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. This might look like doom scrolling. This might look like I'm just watching. I'm hitting yes, I'm still watching after 10 hours on Netflix. It could look like you pacing your room, like, this, nope, that. Like I often feel like a pinball in a pinball machine when I'm in freeze. So fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So we just talked about that. It's like appeasement. It's like people pleasing, fornicate, sex, feed, eating.
Like masturbation too, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Flop, like you said, just kind of like dead. So it's kind of like that freeze state, but you're like, whoa, like doormat.
Well, it's kind of like dissociation. It's not like completely. Yep.
And then friend, where you actively seek out friending that person in an attempt to manipulate the situation or the relationship so that you're safe.
It's kind of like Fawn.
It is like
Kind of, except for Fawn is, I think like the intentions
I
behind
feel
it
like
feel a little different.
Fawn is more subconscious.
Yes,
I don't think you
exactly.
know you're doing it.
No,
And
I don't
friend
think
is
so either.
more,
And
I'm
friend is
going
you're
to do
actively
it
doing it.
to
Oh,
manipulate
okay.
Like
Oh, okay.
frenemy,
So I don't,
like
I hate
frenemy
this
feeling.
word, but friend is a bit more like manipulative and
Yeah.
intentional.
Intentional.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
like frenemy. So
Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
so I
frenemy.
want to normalize like those responses, especially if there's a trauma history. That feed might be, or food or whatever might be something, like you said, that is going to be that initial default, because that might be just how your system is set up. But does it always have to be like that? No, just like you two have said, like over time that's changed, and it's because you've done your work, right? Like you're working on things. And so I just want to give that person hope that no, it isn't necessarily always going to be the first thought that in my experience is not always going to be the first thought that comes to mind. I also happen to be one of the 30% that, like, when I'm in a stress situation, I actually go to like not eating. Like my stomach,
for you,
like I get
Molly.
nauseous.
Good for you.
Well, I mean, just saying, I'm just saying, like, but mine will be fight if it
We
involves
can
somebody
normalize
else.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to normalize that. Like there are
Oh, of
30% of
course.
people that
I've
goes
had
and
moments of that.
yeah. Yeah. So
Nauseous.
it's just knowing yourself, right? So I get nauseous, and like if it's somebody else involved, I will fight for them, but I will never fight for myself. So if it has to do with me, then I go into freeze. I'm just like, right? So like it's just knowing yourself as far as like this question goes, and knowing that, there are techniques and tools and stuff that you can learn along the way, and you can reframe things, and you can write new stories, and you can regulate your nervous system. And while that may still always be a response because it's biologically wired in there, it may not always be your first response, and it may not, like Clarissa said, have like that saliency, like that power that
I
it
had
once
this
did.
other thought. I'm just like weird. Sorry, it's not weird, but there's this interesting kind of spiritual concept. I think that sort of has to do with this, which effectively is like, if we were absolutely perfect all the time, then we would never really need to know a higher power, right? So part of being like a spiritual person is messing up and having to seek wisdom, having to seek a new, like, it's kind of this process of humanity is, and so maybe I'm reading into the question incorrectly, but part of what as we're talking, I'm sort of like, is part of what she's saying, like, oh, like we never have a craving anymore. Like, so something happens and I'm just like, oh, cool. So they broke up with me. Like, oh, cool. So I lost my job. Anyway, like, I just don't think that's a human condition, right? So I think you want to
That's a robot condition.
right.
Yeah.
Even the robots. I mean, I'm in a very
but
great
you're
place
also
with
wired to
ChatGPT.
crave, right? You are wired to crave. I think that's the other thing too. Is
Say
like,
it again. Yeah, like
we
that's
have a
what
lot
I
of
mean.
stories
Like,
around it. We have these stories around it, and we have a lot of judgment around it. And you are literally wired to crave. And in fact, did you know that craving, when we talk about substance use disorder and we're using the DSM to diagnose, that meeting the criteria, quote, criteria of craving cannot be used to diagnose you when you are in remission.
Can you say that like I'm a 3-year-old?
Sure. So what that means is, let's say you have a history of substance use disorder, be it alcohol, food, whatever.
Let's just say like I'm a food addict.
Okay. So you have this history of food, and you've been symptom free for the last 3 months, with the exception of craving. You are in what's considered early remission, even if you meet, quote, criteria for craving, because you are literally wired to crave.
So what they're saying, that actually made me like take such a breath. I mean, that so normalizes wanting to eat, right? So what you're saying is, even if you were in a full, like that we couldn't diagnose you with food addiction anymore because it hadn't been active for 3 months. If there was cravings in that, if you still were like, oh, I wish I could have a brownie right now, that wouldn't even count in re-diagnosing you, because it's such a normal part of being a human. That's like what I'm hearing. It's like, like, and so, I guess the answer is the less fire we put on it, the less hot it gets, right?
Right.
Yes.
And I also think like we are biologically wired for food and sex. So food is going to be more prominent
Yeah.
for a lot of people. But rather than fearing that this is something that's always going to be waiting in the wings in recovery, we just have to shift to like trusting that we're always evolving. Old pathways might still be there, but they don't have to dominate. And it's about deepening our trust in ourselves and our skills and allowing ourselves to practice recovery.
Well, and
Right.
I'm like very into like, I'm very into me. No, I'm just kidding. But I have to tell you, like, I've been doing, well, this is a different podcast, but I've been doing like a lot of research on sabotage. We're going to talk about it. But a part of what they're saying in sabotage is like the healing of it is like, just sort of understanding what's happening, that we go into such a blackout place when we sabotage. So I'm really working on just taking this beat and being like, hold on, like, and saying to myself, which I would say to patients, like, I don't care if you eat the cookie. I want to understand what's happening when you eat
The
the cookie. Like, I'm
why.
doing that with myself. So when
Mhm.
I was like going to like watch Modern Family to put me to sleep, which is really against my 2025 stuff, like very clearly, I was like, oh, I think you can't handle this happiness. I think it's hard for you to take this in and you want this down regulator and it's going to mess with your sleep, and go ahead and do it. And this is so interesting. I was as loving as I've ever been with myself in the history of Molly Carmel. And it's such a different way to live.
The
Mhm.
curiosity.
I
Like
don't know if I would have
actually
been that way with a food craving. I just want to put that to the normal, to the audience. Like, I think I still get really annoyed with food cravings, and probably will be my next space that I work on it. And I think sometimes when I get annoyed, it makes me give in easier if I'm just being like radically honest here on food drinks.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, it's an
yeah.
interesting exercise, the sacred
It
pause.
really is to be curious. And I ask my clients all the time to be good scientists. And to be a good scientist, that means that you just observe data and you maybe record it, but it's
Yeah.
not with judgment. It's literally just observe, report. I ask my children that all the time. I'm like, because I don't want to parentify them. So if I'm like concerned about one or the other and I can't quite get there, I might be like, hey, Olivia, can you go check on your sister and observe and report? I don't want her to engage. I don't want her to take over. I just want her
Yeah.
to observe and report, and we can do the same thing for our
I'm
lives.
like, I'm using a lot of things from the podcast
Yeah.
today. 8Fs.
You know,
Observer
it's
report is so good with kids,
it's
though.
Yes.
it is. I'm like,
Yes.
I don't need anything more. I don't need your opinion. I don't
Right.
need like
Yeah.
you to
I don't
go
need
in
your
and
police
intervene.
siren,
No,
right?
I just need you to go observe, report to me, and I will make the decision. And so, like, because I know sisters can't be right, they can't necessarily, especially at that age, be
Unbiased.
unbiased. Exactly. Thank you, Clarissa. Where I can be the higher order thinking. So when we do that observe report where we're just observing and we're just writing down, we can take that to our friends. I can take it to Clarissa. I can take it to my husband. I can take it to you, Molly. And I could be like, help me decipher this data.
Yep.
Help me understand what's happening here. And then you might
Great
have
way to
curious
raise kids,
questions that
though.
help me to think about it in a different way.
Yeah. Well, my client knows who she is. I hope we answered it. I learned a lot. I feel like I got to ask the question today. And I really want to say, I said I'm going to ask the food drinks, and it was the best idea I came up with. So thanks for existing, my besties. And we obviously want to hear from you. So email us at, what is it?
Ask the shrinks at foodshrinks.com.
Ask the shrinks at foodshrinks.com. See, I'm practicing. And we can't wait to see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Food Shrinks. Quick reminder, this podcast isn't a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider for guidance suited to your needs. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to help us reach others on the recovery journey. Take care, and remember, freedom with food is possible. See you next time.